He's not in that business. He's not in that business of changing your diapers. For the beginning, he does. I mean, this kind of goes to the conversation. You know, if you're friends with Mark on Facebook, go and look at his post today just about maturity and just read through the comments. It's really interesting how different people view something like obedience. Okay? But he's not really interested, and I've given this analogy before, he's not interested in spoon-feeding you things. Now, for all of us that have children, there was a time where I loved feeding my kids. Chop up their food, feed them, spoon-feed them. If I had to do that with Jonah right now, I would be so annoyed. And if you saw me, if you saw me at our house, like you came over and we sat down to dinner and I had Jonah next to me and you saw, now I'm cutting up his meat and I'm spoon feeding him, what would you think? That face that you made is exactly what you should think. Like, wait, something is really, really wrong here. Something's really wrong. Do you want to do that as a parent? Like, I'm really not interested. I'm really not interested. And you know what? I don't think the father's really interested in doing that either. I think he's interested in you getting up, sitting down, having a meal with him, eating steak, and him not cutting the meat for you. But as we become more and more mature, we're able to operate with this joy the way that Jesus operated with it. All right? So I had this kind of like, I had this thought about what joy really looks like to me. And to me, it looks like a sandwich. To me, it really looks like a sandwich. And I just want to give you this illustration of what I think joy actually looks like. All right? So this is my joy illustration. All right. So in our regular thinking of joy, right, we've thought like, okay, I'm here, I have to endure all this, right? I endure all this. Once I endure all this, I obtain what? Joy. Okay, but what's the other thing that happens? Are you going to have to endure something else? Yeah. Probably. Okay. So now in this way of thinking, this very linear way of thinking, I'm here, I go through all this, I have no joy in the middle of it. When I get through it, I have joy. All right? Now there's a problem. I have a new thing to go through. What am I going to have to do? I abandon this joy. I abandon it. I go through all this. I obtain a new joy. Okay, I feel really good about myself. All right? And I know it does manifest in feeling. I really do think it manifests in feeling. But because I carried no joy with me through this time, I have to abandon this joy. Now I go through it again, right? Until I'm obtaining joy down. And I'm deferring joy. I continue deferring joy, and I'm kicking the can down the road until I can get through this circumstance thing. Okay? But I think what joy does is says, oh, you know what? Look at this circumstance. The only way I'm going to handle it is by having in my hand joy. That's the only way I'm going to be able to really handle it. So this circumstance, I actually look at it, and I have to name it. Like in my life, too many times we actually don't make progress in our life because we're actually not naming the things we need to make progress in. Like, you know the avoidance technique? We just ignore it, and we don't say, okay, here are the things in my life that I need to mature and grow in. Right? We don't actually do that. Okay, I need to mature in the way I think. I need to mature in the way I spend my money. I need to mature in my health. And the way I contribute to my health. I need to mature. I got to mature in all these ways. All right? We think about all these things that you have to mature in, but you don't, they become trials to you. Because you have no joy, there's no actual joy saying, oh, I need to mature in the way I think. Oh, I just think so bad. The way I think is horrible. And you just become so downtrodden in the way you think. And you're like, there's a different way. I could bring joy into this and say, whoa, I'm moving towards perfection. Let me actually think about the way I think. And if I put it into the context of perfection, now I have actually something to compare it to. If I put it into the context of glory, oh, now it's actually something I can work with because it's really small, okay? So I look at joy like a sandwich. And I couldn't just tell you what this looks like in my head because this is like, I really think God was like talking to me in sandwich language. Because if you don't love a sandwich, I don't know what to do for you.
You have no joy.
Huh?
You really have no joy.
I have no joy. You have no joy if you don't love sandwiches. Leslie? All right, good. I'm probably thinking like Leslie would put this in a lettuce wrap. But whatever your mode of, I think joy looks like this. I think joy looks like this, okay? And I think what joy looks like is you understand what's before you and you're able to handle it with joy, okay? And the thing that actually really brings you strength in your life is this. That's protein, okay? These are trials. These are things you have to chew on. This is hard, okay? You don't give this to babies, right? You don't. This is for mature, like this is meat. Like, I know, Leslie, this is killing you. Yeah. But this is protein. This is actually what makes you stronger, okay? This. Now, I can't just handle it with no joy. If I try to handle it with no joy, it just becomes what? It just becomes a mess. It just becomes a mess. All right? I look like a Neanderthal. I'm just shoving things and I'm trying to handle this thing. And what joy does is it sandwiches the protein of your life, which is trials. Why are we trying to avoid protein? We try to avoid these things as much as possible, and then we don't grow. So joy is this thing that I'm actually able to really put a handle around the trials that I have in my life. The protein, the things that make me stronger, this is joy right here. It sandwiches it. I'm able to handle this because I have joy. Without this, I'm just trying to handle this. I could shove it in my mouth, but it's just a mess. It's just a mess. But with joy, I'm actually able to deal with these things. Now, it also allows me to like lettuce and tomatoes and I really had this vision. Like this is family and this is friendship and all these things that you can put on to flavor those things. It becomes beautiful when it's actually put in this context of joy. But have you ever tried to deal with like family and relationships and all this stuff out of a joyful context? Like that's actually how we do it all the time, most of the time. But here I have joy and I'm actually able to handle the trials of my life, which is the protein, and I could balance it with the flavors of my life, which is a family and relationships, understanding my job, my career, all that kind of stuff. I can't do it if I just decided to put it in my hand like this. It's just not, it's not the way. Does anybody want this? No? No. I'm sick anyway, so I wouldn't give it to anybody. Yeah. I'm not going to put this in my mouth, actually, because it's kind of gross. This is not the lettuce we would use for a lettuce wrap. No. But this right here, joy, allows me to handle it. It allows me to go through the times that I need to go through so I can actually strengthen myself. I can endure the things I need to endure. So like the verse says, so that his glory is magnified. And I become stronger. And because I become stronger, and me becoming stronger is not for the sake of me becoming stronger. Okay? It's actually, me becoming stronger is for the sake of me lifting you up. Okay? We should never want to become stronger for becoming stronger's sake. Like, that's not the point. We become stronger so I can actually take my brother right here and I can lift him up. And then he becomes stronger. And then what can he do? He can lift the next one up. But we don't do that outside of joy, outside of a context of joy. Because I'm continually, if I just say joy is something I need to achieve, I'm not going to be able to handle the things in life that need to be handled. Not gracefully, at least. Not gracefully. You could actually, I don't think we were like just meant to put our head down and barrel through our trials. I actually think we are meant to do it gracefully. Like with some style. I think that really brings glory to the Father. I mean, have you ever seen somebody handle a trial not very gracefully? I've done it. I did it yesterday. There was something that happened in my house that I was so mad about, and I did not handle it gracefully. Do you think I brought on any glory to God because of the way I reacted or I acted? I didn't. Everybody's like, what the heck is going on? What is wrong with this person? It wasn't all my fault, though. I won't say that. We'll talk about it later. No need for the details. But us handling our trials gracefully brings a certain credit to the Father that we claim to have. I mean, I honestly, maybe this is just me. I have a hard time with chaos. I have a hard time with chaos. I like to get to places very early just because I feel like there's no chaos in that. Clutter, I can cause it sometimes, but I have a hard time with chaos, okay? And when we present a chaotic representation of our life, and somebody says, they call themselves a son, what connotation does that have with the Father? We should be actually doing this with style points. I really believe that. I really believe, and look, that does not mean that you're not vulnerable. And people will go out of the way that, okay, I need to put on a certain front. No, I think that we need to be vulnerable. I think we need to be transparent. But we need to handle the things that we handle our trials with joy. And if we handle them with joy, I actually can be more transparent. Because I'm putting it in right perspective. It's hard for me to be transparent with you when I haven't put my circumstances in a proper perspective. Because everything is magnified. Everything that's happening to me is the end of the world. Everything that's going on is the worst thing that's going on. Everything that pops up then is just another straw on the camel's back, right? But you start putting things in proper perspective. And even big things. Your marriage. Let me put it in proper perspective. Perfection, glory of the Father. Okay. You know what? We can keep going. We can keep going. We could actually see this to right. Your job. Your boss. Your relationship with that person that drives you nuts. Put it in right perspective. I can handle this with joy. All these things that we have in our life, if we're able to handle all these trials kind of things, we're able to handle it with that surrounding it, and then we bring glory to the Father. But not the other way around, right? We won't bring glory to the Father if we're just presenting a completely, I just don't like being around depressed people. I'm sorry, okay? I don't like, it doesn't do anything for my spirit. I love being around, do you love being around joyful people? Like seriously joyful, not like Not like just bubbly or just, like aloof. I'm talking people who actually think that you can make it through the thing that you're going through. Do you like being around those people? There's a reason. There is a reason. And the only time you really like not being around those people is when you want to commiserate your own misery. When you want people to validate the thing that you're saying is the worst thing in the world. That's the only time we're like, oh, could you, let's talk about this thing. That's when we really like being around. Otherwise, if you have a goal in your life and if you're measuring something, you want to be around someone who says, we can do this if. I had a boss, I had this boss. He's a really like forward thinker, really big thinker. And I didn't know how to handle him in the beginning because I thought all his ideas were like, that's too big. That idea is too big. All right. So my first inclination in dealing with him was, I have to tell you why we can't do that. Because I need to bring some reality. I need to, we need to be realistic, right? And I thought, oh, that's a really good thing. I'm going to be realistic. So I'm bringing reality to him, and he's just getting annoyed at me. And I'm bringing reality to him, and he's just he's trying to think big, and I'm just dousing it with the cold water of reality, right? And he finally said to me, hold on. He said, Ben, I never want you to say no to me again. I never want you to say no to me again. What I want you to say to me is, we can do this if. I want to hear from you a can-do if attitude. I can do this if you do that. And he taught me actually how to get buy-in with him. He taught me that I could bring reality, I could bring the cold dash of reality and say, okay, we can do that, but I need this. I need this support. And I was just walking around thinking I was bringing reality. I had no joy in the situation. I had no joy in the situation. I'm just I'm the negative person. I am the negative. I'm you can't do it. We've tried that before. Have you ever gotten this? Have you ever gotten that? We've tried to do that before, but it didn't work because of that. You bring a new idea. Yeah, no. He stopped me in my tracks and he said, you cannot tell me no ever again. And I stopped. I stopped telling him no. What I did tell him was, hey, we can do that thing that you're seeing if we do this here too. And now our relationship was okay, we could actually have these conversations. He could actually talk to me about big vision stuff that he has for our workplace. And I could say, okay, I think we can do that big vision, but in order for us to do that big vision, we have to do these 3 things. And he's like, you know what? I'm glad that you thought about those 3 things because I'm thinking about this big. All circumstances, I have joy now because I'm putting him in proper perspective. Oh, we can do this. This is just a bite size of the big vision. I'll take a little bite. So you have to be able to compare the thing you are going to gain with the thing that you're going to endure. So Jesus said, I will endure all of this because I know I'm going to gain at the end you. And to me, the value of you way outweighs the cost of this. And that's what joy is. Joy is me being able to truly understand the value and pay the price, the cost to get to that value. And I walk with that knowing all throughout it. This is the vision. Jesus said, I know it. I know it's you. Oh, here comes the humiliation of the cross. It's you I'm after. That. I can endure this thing. It's you I'm after. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. And for everything that you're going through, if you're able to say it's worth it, then you're operating with joy. So you could do that with anything in your life. You could do it with your health. I'm trying to do it with my weight. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. I'm going to continue doing it because it's worth it. I could do it with my relationships. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. I'm operating in joy. Every time I say it's worth it, I'm operating with joy. I could do with anything. Anything. Because I'm understanding the worth of the thing. And it's bigger than those little circumstances portion. Those costs are tiny compared to the thing that's worth it over here. I thought you had something to say.
I've been chewing on this for a second, so I don't know if it's a question, a comment, or adding to what you said, but when you summed up the vision at the end, because I was thinking of, bear with me 1 second, this idea of a vision and an internal perspective. So I'll use abbreviations because my handwriting is horrible. And I'm still a little stuck on the feeling of joy versus joy itself, because we did talk about, like in the passage, he said he endured the agony. And he talked about depressed, you don't want to be around depressing. So there is this level of joy and happiness. But what really struck me when you were talking is, first of all, Jesus was on the cross for a short amount of time. Not really long. But he knew his vision and perspective here. And I just wonder how many times when people are stuck, and this really hit me tying back to your talk on vision a few weeks ago and what you guys have been talking on, if we don't have the vision and we're stuck in a place that's like agony, like you're talking about. Like if at work, for example, you say, man, I might not enjoy my job, but I have a vision of getting me to the job I do enjoy. Or I have a vision for providing financially to fulfill this other thing I want to do. You can then walk through it that season joyfully. But I think if people don't have this, if they haven't defined this, then you are sort of out of joy. It's hard that's where I think when you're drawing the diagram of you get stuck here, I think it's because you don't know what this is. So you're just meandering in a place without vision.
Yeah. I think it also goes back to Ecclesiastes. Am I on? I think it also goes back to not understanding like suffering within the bigger context.
Well, if you know that end, you can suffer through.
Yeah, if I know this end, right? If I know this end, and that could be also another reason why we don't get there, because we never knew what the end was. We just went through a tunnel, but we never knew I never knew what the end was. It's just the way that everybody else went, so I decided we're going to go that way too. But you didn't own it. Like it was never yours. And that's why Jesus was able to endure it, because he knew, I knew, that's what I'm after. I'm after you, so I'm going after you. And if we go through anything in life and not knowing what we're going after, if we do not have vision, you will perish.
Yeah.
It's because, I can't compare it to anything. I can't actually weigh the cost. Here, I'll ask Mark this question. I'll ask him directly. Have you ever felt like you could just shut the doors and be like, I could be done with this? But you don't, because you know what the greater vision is. Have you ever felt like that in your life? I could stop doing this thing right now, because all it's doing right now is bringing me grief. And if you stay in that place and don't remind yourself of what the grander vision is, what the greater perspective is, you will. You will shut it down. I remember my first year at Amazon. All right? It was the worst year of my professional life. It really stunk. I would get up. Mark used to drive me to work. What time would you pick me up? 4 in the morning? He would pick me up at 4 in the morning, and then, because I didn't have a car, he drove me to work. You would pick me up at I don't even know. It was late. I would work from 4 in the morning to, I don't know, 10 at night sometimes. I think 10 at night at times. And it stunk. And I'll tell you, there was times I didn't even come home. Jen will tell you. I would call her and be like, I'm not coming home. I'm just going to go to this hotel across the street because I can't drive. It stunk. And I remember this vividly. It was in the middle of the day. Jen's home with the kids. And I have reached my last straw. Like, I was tired. And that's another thing. Way too many times we bow out at the tired spot. We get tired and we're like, I'm ready to be done. And I called Jen, and I'm in this one area where I could actually, in the warehouse, I can get cell phone reception and nobody can really see me. And I called my wife and I said, if you'll allow me, I'll quit this job right now. I'll quit this job right now. I'm coming home. Like, lowest point of my life. And I first of all, don't do that, fellas. That's the most unfair thing you can do to your wife. Like, just put everything on her like that. I was not thinking rationally. I was not thinking rationally. And she said to me, I can't let you do that right now, because there's bigger things we actually need to do. Like, there's actually a bigger plan. So, very begrudgingly and almost angry, I'm like, she didn't let me stop this suffering. Like, I can't believe I have to continue suffering through this thing. Because I'm not thinking about the bigger picture. Like, I'm not thinking about, okay, there's children, there's a wife to support, there's all these things. And, you could say at the end that they're material things, but you know what? They have been put under my stewardship, so they're important. So I go back to work, and actually, after being put into that perspective, it actually started to become easier. I had taken it 1 hour at a time, and I got through those days. And at the end, it was over. Like, it was during this time of year, and peak time is over. And I look back, and I'm like, whoa, I made it. And it was because I called my wife, and she put me back into the right perspective. She was actually able to take this suffering thing that I was going to and put it into right perspective. And because it was put into right perspective, I was able to endure. That's joy. It's kind of simplistic, but that's joy. And because she put it into right perspective, my career after that really took off. I remember my boss came up to me at the end, and he was like, I didn't think you were going to make it, and I'm just impressed that you endured. That's the exact words he said to me. And then I started getting opportunities. Oh, you endured that? Here, why don't you try this? Why don't you try this opportunity here? It wasn't because, it wasn't my resume. It wasn't the things I've done in the past. It wasn't any of that stuff. Like, all that stuff was out the window. He didn't care about it. Nobody cared about it. But I endured in that thing, and because I endured in that thing, he then said, you know what? I think you can do this thing over here. And then I endured that. But it didn't become it became, whoa, promotion. You know what? Promotion sometimes looks like it just comes after enduring something really, really hard. You want promotion? Operate at the level you want to be promoted in before you get promoted. And you endure, and next thing you know, promotion comes. Breakthrough comes. Oh man, breakthrough. And now I start running, and I'm faithful with the thing that he's given me. And next thing you know, he says, you know what? You've done really well with this thing I gave you. Hey, you want to try this? And next thing you know, promotion again. Now, to the point now that I'm really happy with my job. And that doesn't mean I like everything about my job. FYI. That don't mean you have to like everything. There's no promises about that. But because of endurance, I got to the place of promotion when I learned to put proper thing in a proper perspective and have joy about it. But because it's fueling the vision. And that's what I have to say about that. So I don't know what comments you guys have or thoughts about joy and endurance, but I'll just leave it. Yeah.
I just really feel like joy is always with us, and it's really our momentum to get us to point A to B to C. And I think it's really our decision to really dig deep into it as we're on that journey of our knowing and our suffering.
Yeah, I'm glad. Who said choice before? Like, joy is a choice. You said, right? I believe that it is a choice. And it's a choice even in your circumstances. Like, I think it's a choice that says, oh, these are my circumstances. I name them. I choose. It's not really that impressive if you choose joy in really good times. Like, what's that? What's this like? Oh, I'm joyful. I just got a raise. Joy. I just, like, this. That's not. The choice is impressive when it's within endurance, like Jesus gave us the example. Yeah.
From the time you drew that picture, I had like a different picture in my head, and then Chuck talked about vision, and it kind of reminded me of something from Gathering when Joel was here and the vision that he had. But I really see, instead of like when you said linear, I feel like it really is 3D. So if you could make that come out this way, having that constant vision of the joy is now, like it's already happened, it's already there. I think that's more, I don't know, at least that's how I see it. I don't always feel it this way, but I think that that's the reality of it versus that it's this way. Does that make sense?
It's the reason why I view joy like a sandwich.
Yes.
Because it's stacked, and I have that. I have the trials in the middle, but I'm able to handle it because I have joy.
Yeah.
Dig in. I'm able to handle these things with joy.
So this is probably too simplistic, but I just feel like it's a good reminder for all of us. Just, I kept asking myself, you know, you have these terms, perfection and glory, or like, you know, you can think of what is the big picture, what is the eternal perspective. And I just like repeatedly in my spirit just keep being reminded that the best way to just be reminded of that perspective or to like attain that perspective is just sitting with the Father, like time with him. And I just recently was just struggling with something, and it's like I try to, you know, figure it out in my own head, and we can almost try to do that, like with joy. Like I should have joy right now, or we try to like problem solve it. And then literally just like sitting with the Father, it's like everything changes. And I can see and I can, you know, breathe. And so I don't know, I just felt like that was an important reminder for all of us that if you find that you're struggling with that perspective that helps you endure, sit with the Father, spend time with him. Don't just read the words, you know, but in him, like the perspective is there.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because you pointed to something that I wanted to make sure I said, but I didn't until you. Ultimately, in our own minds, there's a point where, like, even perfection is too small, but the Father is never too small. So everything falls under the perspective of the Father, and he's always bigger than the thing that you have going on, even how big it can be, right? So, I mean, the ultimate perspective, the ultimate appropriate perspective is the Father for all things. He's the perspective that you go with, right? And when you're actually, and it goes to time and relationship. The more that you sit, just like Jen said, the more that you sit with the Father and understand his perspective and then understand him as the perspective, the better you're able to get to the point where you're able to right-size your circumstance. Because looking at my circumstance here, it's not right-sized, it's huge. Putting it in the perspective of the Father, oh, okay, I get it. And that's anything. Like, you can't put anything that actually goes above the Father and is bigger. All right? So there's actually no excuse for anything that you're going through. And that's not me being insensitive to the thing that you're going through. It's just right sizing it according to the Father, according to who he is.
Just this whole thing reminds me of a quote, and I apologize, I can't remember who said it, but the quote goes something like, life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% of how I react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And just thinking about this whole thing, if you maintain joy the whole time. And I like the other example that you just gave. Like when you're looking at something like this, it never looks the same way. You know, and it just reminds me of I've heard it said many times, God never gives us more than what we can handle. It may feel at the moment that it hits us that we're never going to be able to get through it, we're never going to be able to get past it, but we've all had things like that in our life, and now with time, to put it in perspective, it's not near as bad as it seemed when it was right here.
Yeah. I could block out the sun with my finger. That don't mean the sun went away, right? My perspective is just here. Like my finger's huge, and the sun, that's not, like, look at it from me. If you're looking at me, I just look like a moron. Right, here I am. My thumb is huge. My thumb's not huge. It's just in your face. Anything in your face seems huge. Like anything in your face seems like the biggest thing in the world. Until you back away. Oh, okay, I can handle that. All right. Well, that's all I have. You're welcome to. All right, I love you. I love you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you Sunday. Go have joy in all you do. Consider it all joy. Put things in right perspective. Okay, wait. I do have to tell you one thing. We go on our regular schedule starting next week. So next week is home groups. The week after that is core, right? Where's Diane? Core. Then after that, home groups, and then we'll have Christmas or something in the middle of there. But regular schedule starting next week, right?